everybody, and welcome to Central Texas Life, the podcast. And it is a joy to welcome Oli Pettigrew to the podcast. You are that Englishman in Texas.
Yep, there you go. It's that Englishman. There's only one of us, and it's me.
That's right. It would be you. But you know what? In the last 2 weeks, I have interviewed 2 British citizens who were born in Hong Kong.
Really?
In Waco, Texas.
That's unbelievably peculiar. You're kidding.
Yes, right. Danny Howard, who is a composer, she was here in Waco with her husband, Pablo Urbina, who was one of our conductor finalists for the Waco Symphony. They sat right there, and she told me about life in Hong Kong. And then here you are, 2 weeks later.
That's wild.
Born in Hong Kong, but
That's
you
right.
were reared in England.
Sort of, yeah. I was born in Hong Kong. I moved when I was 5 to the UK, and then I sort of finished school up until 18, living in the southeast of England. I went through sort of prep school, and then I went to boarding school. And then on my gap year, at that point, my parents had actually moved back to Texas. So I finished off boarding school, living in a small apartment nearby. And then I went back to Hong Kong. And so total, really, in my life, I think 25 years in Asia, about 12 years in the UK, and now we're approaching 10 years in America, which is crazy because I still feel like I just got here.
Well, and you look like you're about 15 years old, so I don't know. I don't know how you pack all that in.
You should have seen me a few years ago. I've had a baby face my whole life.
To this young life. Well, it is so exciting to talk to you. We met at an unlikely place, I guess, but it's a happening hip place now. It's called Steak Lassie Waco. And of course, I've had Jacob and Dave Ennis, the fabulous pianist who does his little thing there on Thursday evenings. And we met, and it's kind of a place you like to frequent with your wife.
It is, yeah. It's a great place. I was just, the thing about it is, I mean, I've been coming to Waco for 17 years, and, I've been married to my missus for 15. And I just remember when the only thing you could find downtown in Waco was parking, because there was nothing to do.
Yeah.
It was just a bunch of abandoned buildings. And now, I mean, in the last 5 years, the sort of glow up that Waco's got, and the fact that I can go to a bar that's got a speakeasy in the back, and it's got that kind of New York feel almost.
It does.
It's wild to me.
Yeah, it does. And you are the consummate jet setter. I mean, you have lived all over the world. You've traveled all over the world with your work. Let's talk about your work. I mean, you have packed a lot in your young life when it comes professionally because of all the shows you have done.
Yeah, it was very lucky, actually. On that gap year I was talking about, when I went to Hong Kong, my mum just basically pushed me into going into a modeling agency. Mm-hmm. That was on a Monday. My first
because she says, my kid is so cute.
Yeah, you got to sign him up. But then on Wednesday was my first casting, and I remember it being hilarious because, there was all these models around, and I didn't really know what to do. And I got up in front of the camera, and the guy goes, okay, pose. And I went like this, and nobody laughed, and everyone looked at me weird. But that being said, booked the job, and Friday was my first shoot. So in that year, suddenly I got into sort of shoots, and then I had billboards, and then I even appeared in a movie. I was a bad guy in a movie, Kurt's Henchman #3.
Really?
Gen Y Cops. You can find it on Amazon Prime. You won't even notice me. But Paul Rudd, who plays Ant-Man in the MCU, he's the good guy. I think he shot me with a sniper rifle in that movie.
Gosh.
So at 18 years old, I'm like, well, this is a fun way to make money.
No kidding.
Once I was really I was spending sort of 4 months, 5 months a year at college in uni in the UK. But whenever I wasn't at uni, I was back in Asia, and I was just kind of modeling here or there. And then it was when I was at 23, I visited Singapore for 2 weeks and left 12 years later with a wife and 2 kids and a career.
Yeah, you're a very, very big deal
it's
in Singapore.
Well, yeah, I got into it. The thing about Asia is it works a little bit differently in America, but all of the international TV at the time was being made sort of primarily out of Singapore or Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't actually sort of working any specifically local Asian. I was working for Sony, but Asia, and Food Network Asia, HBO Asia, Cinemax Asia. And so once I got into TV, there was kind of there wasn't a lot of great hosts at the time. I was watching TV and I go, man, I could do better than that, and I'm just a model. And so, when I was modeling, I started doing TV commercials, and then these production companies that made these TV commercials, they started getting into making television shows, and they just remembered this model that never shut up. And it was like, people were like, you should do that for a job. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll give that a go. And so I had, until September of last year, I think the first show I did, was the World Cup 2006. And I went from one show to the next show to the next show to the next show to the next show for 16 straight years.
Well, I know one year you were doing 6 shows at a time or something. I don't know how you did all that.
Yeah, neither do I, actually, in retrospect, when I think about it. But it was very much a feast and famine kind of thing. Yeah. So all the productions would kind of get pushed towards the end of the year. And yeah, I got one job, and then they called their buddy And so I started off on Cybermax on AXN, and then they called their friend, and suddenly I was on Lonely Planet, and then they called their boyfriend, and suddenly I was on HBO Cinemax, and just it was all kind of word of mouth, and that is
just a magical career. I mean,
yeah.
You really find you're a most unusual dude in being able to do this, or do you know of other people? Oh yeah, well, Joe over there, he was just picked up here and there, and
it was. I mean, I was one of those kids that people always said, "Oh, you should do television," because I was always just, if there was a
you're
camera,
very natural, and
I was performing in front
think
of it.
that's what the camera loves.
I think that's actually my key to TV hosting, that I'd advise other people that are thinking about getting into it. And I think the biggest tip to anybody, even if you're going to do content creation or podcasting or anything, is just to be authentic, to be 100% yourself. And I think the biggest tip I said is, don't try and be cool.
Yeah. No, we
Right.
will, the old broadcaster.
You'd see people, they go out and they do television, and they just try to be cool. Or you see people over-hosting, and they're just like, oh, we're here at the Oscars. And I'm like, that's not how a human being talks.
No.
So I think, I'd go off on these adventures, these things with Lonely Planet and with Food Network, and I'd have to do these really incredibly fun or scary things. I'm climbing without ropes, or I'm eating octopus, or I'm doing all these things.
The worst thing you ever did?
Mate, the thing is, I'd never say if it was bad, because this is my point, is that if you're scared, to be scared. If you're nervous, be nervous, and communicate that with the audience. And
because they're feeling the same thing for you.
Exactly. You are experiencing something, and they are vicariously experiencing it through you. And if you just do it casually, then no one cares. But some of the hardest stuff I've done, some of the physical challenges.
Yeah.
When I was on Right This Minute, I was doing a video about Red Bull, and they had this thing called the Red Bull 400. Which is the hardest 400-meter race in the world. You run the wrong way up an Olympic ski jump. And so Red Bull saw that, and they go, cool, do you want to come to Park City and do it? And I was like, yeah. But, I trained for that. They invited me along with a bunch of CrossFitters and stuff. I was the least fit person there, and I was in pretty good shape then.
Yeah.
And I slept for 14 hours the next day.
Did you?
I couldn't get out of bed in the hotel. I just lay there completely drained. It was absolutely incredible at the same time, though. But that was probably the hardest thing I had to do. But I've done a lot of weird and scary things.
Yeah, eaten strange things.
Yeah,
and you mentioned octopus.
That's right. Well, I was doing something for Food Network, and they have a very traditional breakfast where they just eat. You pull an octopus out of the water, and that's it. That's how you prepare it. But for me, they at least cut it up. So it gets cut up into like 100 pieces, and I always describe it as people as like, imagine if it's something from a sci-fi movie or Star Trek, because they put this bowl down in front of you, and it's all in 100 pieces, but it keeps moving.
But it's still moving,
for like another 30 minutes. And so, the thing about it is you kind of want to get it done quickly, but if you don't chew it properly, because the suckers still work, they'll wrap around your finger.
They're sticking in your throat.
So yeah, they're like, Ollie, if you don't chew this properly, you'll choke to death. And I'm like,
that's not a good thing. No.
Thanks, guys. But that bit of TV
not the way I want to go, really.
That bit of TV is what got me into America, though. So Food Network did that. They showed it at this thing called Real Screen in the US. I didn't even know this was happening. It's just basically like a conference for all of the television networks and production companies in LA over a few days. And I was in Singapore, and I wake up the next day, and I've got an inbox full of production companies and agents and people like this just going, who are you and why don't we know who you are? And so that was one of those people chased me for 2 years until I came out to the States. When I came out to the States, I got my agent, then I moved here, and then my first casting was Right This Minute. So that was my whole thing. Was it took me 11 days after my green card came in to book a job, but it took nearly 18 months to get that green card. So it was a slog.
It's a slow process.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. I can tell you from the guy that's been on the other side of it. And I was a gold standard. They said, Ollie.
Exactly. I mean, the kind of guy we want to come here.
You got 2 kids, you're successful in what you do, and it'll still take you 18 months and a bunch of money.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, nightmare. Yeah. But I got it here. I mean, that's the thing. I still feel like it's been 6 months, and it's 9 years now almost. Which is wild.
So how long here in Central Texas?
So Central Texas, I actually, I came here 9 years ago. This is where we were. And it was, of course, right after my wife and I buy a house in Lorena. So we have this house, and I booked Right This Minute like 6 weeks later. So I enjoyed about 6 weeks. And then they said, cool, can you move to Phoenix in 9 days? I'm like, I guess I'm moving to Phoenix. So I did 2 years where I was flying 100 times a year.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so about 1,000 miles each way. It wasn't. I mean, but thing is, I wanted to get in the US market. This is what I wanted to do. I was working on national television. It's like, you do what you need to do. And so, yeah, I'd leave the studio on a Friday evening. I'd jump on the sort of an 8-9 o'clock flight. I'd land at Dallas at about 1 in the morning. My wife would come pick me up. We'd drive the 2 hours back to the arena. We'd have a quick glass of wine and catch up. And then I basically had like a day and a half, you know, with the family at the house. And then 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, we'd get up, we'd drive to Dallas. I'd take the flight back to Phoenix. I'd get off the plane, go straight to studio, and then shoot Monday. And so, you know, it was a tough couple of years. It lasted about 2.5 years before I said, guys, because the show kept continuing.
We need to go. We need to move. Yeah.
So they moved out, and we did 6 years in Arizona. So it's only really since the show ended.
Did you keep your house here? Or did
yeah. So we
okay,
leased
good.
it while we were gone.
Smart.
So it worked out really nicely in the end.
Yeah. Phoenix, though. Wow, that's climate-wise.
Yeah,
it's a dry heat.
Look how pale I am. All right.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I 6 months of the year I didn't leave the house. You know, so it was just you do get used to it. I promise. Like after like the 3rd or 4th year, you feel it. It's 120 degrees. You feel it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't quite as oppressive as it was. And then, funny enough, you know, we'd fly back here and it'd be cooler, but it's so much more humid.
Oh, that's right.
Like, oh my god!
How
do people do this?
How do they live here? You know, I can't breathe. No, I know. Yeah. But you wanted to come to the States. I think I read because it was just so expensive.
Well,
where you were.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword, really. You know, one, it's like if you're in television, the US is the biggest market. So, you know, while I had definitely, you know, conquered the Asian market, and I'd had, 14 television shows or something like that, and, you know, 6 at the same time, 2 on the same network, back to back.
Unbelievable.
You know, that I was like, all right, well, let's go and see if I can mix it up with the big boys. Turns out I could, which was a nice thing for me. But also, Singapore was a place where the pay was low and the cost of living was extremely high. So, our monthly expenses was $20,000. Yeah. Like, wow. The way I boil it down for people is like, you know, what do you say? A Toyota Prius off the lot in America costs about $35,000 or something like that. That same vehicle off the lot in Singapore is $150,000.
And the reason is?
Well, the reason is many things. It's the most expensive place in the world to live. They don't want people to drive.
So that's a good way to keep them from it.
It is, because they've got the best integrated transport system in the world. They've got thousands of buses, tens of thousands of taxis, and they've got incredible train lines that go anywhere. So you honestly don't need a car. I didn't get a car in Singapore until the time that I had 2 kids going to 2 different schools.
Yeah.
And so we were spending so much money on taxis to do that it was actually cheaper. But yeah, it got to the point where my missus sort of ran the numbers, and she just put it down in front of me, and she goes, Ollie, you need to make $250,000 a year to make nothing. That's zero.
Just to break even.
Yeah, that's where we then start making money. And, you know, Asia was just a completely different way, because television was great and they certainly made you feel famous. And I got to go to the premieres and be dressed and go to the Gucci place and pick out what I wanted to wear, and front row of the fashion shows and all these sort of things, and the meet the celebs and everything else in between. But they honestly didn't really pay you any money. It was terrible. You made your money by doing live events. You got famous enough that other people hired you to get on stage, and that's where you could make your, you know, a little bit of extra cash. So, you know, when we came out here, we bought the house in the arena and 3.5 acres for less than a Toyota Prius cost in Singapore. So, and at that point, you know, it kind of made sense.
This makes sense. Well, so you were a huge hit here stateside with a wonderful show. And I was just sharing with you earlier at KXXV, we have these monitors all around the newsroom, and I'd be working during the day and look up and I'd see this cute show of people showing these funny videos and just sitting around talking and having a good time. That was your show.
That was us, yeah.
Because we're a Scripps station, and I think that's EW Scripps was one of the owners of the show.
Well, yeah, it was kind of unique actually for the show, is that we actually had 3 different station backers all at the same time.
Cox and
one of the
Raycom.
Yeah.
We also at one time were owned by Raycom.
Yeah.
So I have ties to all these corporate entities.
That was great, but it was also the tough part was that when we lost, so we were kind of like a tripod. And then in season 11, one of the legs pulled out, and once it's gone, you just, okay.
Yeah.
It's the business side of show business. It just, it happened like that in the blink of an eye. In the, it happened in the space of about 36 hours. It all just went, that was it.
Oh my goodness.
It happens quick. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Your compadres, though, your colleagues there on the show, you're all friends, and most of them are still in Phoenix, right?
Yeah, they're all still in the Valley, bouncing around. We're all doing our own thing at the moment. I was just talking to Nick from the show, seeing if we want to do a podcast together. But is that was the toughest part, really. The show ending is just how much of a family that place was. I know people say that, but this one really was. I mean, of all the projects I've ever worked on, I've never experienced anything quite like it. The studio, when we were there pre-COVID, was such a fun place. There was no hierarchy. So there was a hierarchy of work. There were producers and executive producers and hosts and editors and everything.
Everybody has their role.
But we were all just the same. We were all just goofed around. We had so much fun. We had parties at my house all the time with like 30, 40 people there. And we just, so that was the toughest part, is the breaking up of the family. And then especially us hosts, you know, people used to sort of write in or call in and just say, wow, you guys seem like you really like each other. Go, oh, it's because we do. We hang out.
That kind of thing you cannot fake. I know when you work with a co-anchor, you know, you don't fake that.
Right. Sometimes you got to grin through it. But yeah, doing Right This Minute was just hanging out with my mates all day, watching the internet. So I was paid to do what everyone else got fired for doing.
I knew enough about the show, just watching it from my desk, looking up, going, they are having so much fun. Yeah, how do you get that gig?
A lot of laughs. A lot of laughs, that one. And it was honestly, that was interesting for me because a lot of my shows had done it would just been me, you know. So
the lone ranger.
So suddenly I'm joining. Suddenly I'm joining on a team of, you know, there's 5 of us at the table, and I was like, so, and that was a really interesting thing as well, because I've done every kind of show you can imagine up until coming to Right This Minute, and I still had things to learn. That was what, you know, I hit the ground running, but I was watching, you know, Beth, she was the original host, and Nick especially, and watching, okay, how do you do this? How do you tell these stories? How do you, okay, all right. And then I kind of put my own spin on it, because we were kind of told, don't look at the camera. And I'm like, no, that's what I always do that. I like to bring the audience in. So there's things called, you know, some of my directors used to call it pulling an Ollie, is when you kind of give a look to camera that makes everybody laugh. Or
that little aside, like bringing them in on the joke.
Exactly. Or like something else that said, I'm always quite good at boiling down something very complicated into something very easy to understand. And I also would like to do that. I'd pull the audience in. And so it kind of changed the way the show was kind of done, because the guys all started doing it. So now we've got like a 5th or 6th co-host being our audience and just involving them.
Exactly.
And that's when it really kind of like started connecting with people, and we got some great messages and some wonderful fans. They still message us saying we missed the show. I mean, I missed the show too. But you know, all great things, all good things come to an end. Yeah,
and some things can outlive their so sometimes it all works out for the best. Huh?
I mean, in the world of television and syndicated television, for a show like that, The Little Engine That Could, to last 11 seasons.
That's remarkable.
It's pretty wild.
That is remarkable. Well, what you're doing now is so much fun. And it was just sort of a top of mind. Here I am in Texas experiencing things, and that's what makes That Englishman in Texas so charming.
Yeah, I really appreciated just how it's connected with Texas. I honestly, you know, it was a pretty tough time. You know, the shows ended. It was a pretty stressful time selling our house in Phoenix and relocating, and the kids having to switch schools. And so there was a lot
How old are they now?
They're both freshmen. They're 14, 15.
So they got their friends, and it's tough. Yeah.
And I've moved them around the world quite a bit. And so, you know, I was a little bit of a loss of what to do. I was just kind of fixing up the house, getting it ready to move in. It was just a lot of 8-hour days listening to podcasts and building things and painting things. And it was the first time where I didn't really have a project to work on. So I just started making videos, you know, about Texas or about what I'm doing. And I did a video about eating a kolache in West, and it just blew up on TikTok. It had like 300 and something thousand views.
The first time you'd eaten one, or?
Well, it was talking about the first time I'd eaten one. But it was my first time at Slovarchek's.
Oh yeah.
And I just did a video about, this is something, if you didn't know, West is this place that people come for kolaches. It was the first thing I did on the very first time I visited Texas, the very first time 17 years ago, but it blew up. And so I'm like, well, I still know how to tell stories, and like it's, you know, online, people's attention span is about 1.5 minutes to 3 minutes. And that's kind of the length.
You go longer. It's
that's kind of the length of the story of Right This Minute. So I'm like, well, this is what I do. So I started just telling stories, and they've really just started connecting. And so there's a few different things that I do now. Is that there's the experiential thing where I'll go somewhere and say, oh, look at this place. There's the sort of like the taste experiential, which is like going to try some drinks or a burger or a kolache. And then I do these things as well, which are just my observations of Texans. And those are the ones that have really sort of been connecting. Like I called them out. I did a video yesterday, which did pretty well, where I just called out Texas for the tea being too sweet.
I saw that.
And
in fact, I commented on it too. And I said, I said, you are right, no doubt.
Well, that's the thing. There's a lot of people like they go, okay, that's why I think that Texas has been so welcoming and adopted me, is that they go, oh, y'all get us, like y'all understand. But and it's always my mantra in television's also always been have fun, don't make fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't like shows that, you know, make you cringe, or shows that ridicule. And so my whole thing.
No, and I think that's what people connect with. I mean, we Texans don't feel like you're making fun of us. You're just with fresh eyes looking at what we take for granted.
That's exactly it. It's exactly it. Just like pointing something out that you guys do or say or how you do it, and people are like, oh yeah, we do that. Texasisms. Yeah, I love Texasisms. We got started on that one as well.
Oh yeah.
I've got a whole bunch of stuff planned. I got the Texas hello, the Texas goodbye. It's just like, and then. The strange thing about it is, Anne, is like 8 years on national television, you know, and syndicated 200 channels. We even went into Canada, and I come back, I'd be around Waco. I got recognized maybe 3 or 4 times for the show. You'd be in HEB or something. Ever since that Englishman in Texas, I get recognized literally every time I go out. Every time I'm anywhere in Waco, I go into the grocery store, I'm checking out, I'm in another store. I mean, I walked into the pub the other day and some guy just pointed at me from across the pub and went, Englishman!
Englishman!
And I was like, well, okay, this is kind of a thing. So I decided, you know, instead of just waiting around for another casting or, you know, for a job to be working for someone else, I was like, well, why don't I take control of this? And just start making this what I'm doing. Recently just started monetizing it, and I'm getting offers from all over now. So I put up a database online for people to fill in. And you wouldn't believe the places I'm being invited to now and the experiences to come out and do. And so now it's like...
Right, and then have that Englishman in Canada or whatever, that kind of thing?
Exactly where I hope in 5 years' time, that's where it is, to start
I can see a half-hour
show. Production company and it's that Englishman in. And just because my mum always sort of joked about it, like I was born American, you know, just like I'm the British kid, but born in Asia. But I grew up, I was always enamored with the States. You know, I've got my pickup truck parked outside and my healer, and I live in the country, and I've got my cowboy hat. And it's
your cowboy hat is well loved.
It's
well
a good
used.
one. I love that one. I found it by accident I was in Tombstone, Arizona.
Yeah, tell that story.
Yeah, well, I just love, you know, my wife and I as well. It's our favorite movie. Is Tombstone. Yeah. And so it's what an amazing place to go and visit if you're ever in Arizona. Highly recommend it because it feels like you've gone back in time. You feel like you're in the Wild West. And I've never really been able to sort of pull hats off. My wife, she was the top model for 25 years. She can put on a hat or a pair of sunglasses and looks amazing. Yeah. So I saw this hat, I plonked it on my son. I still have the photo. I took a picture of him. You can just say, hey, Ewan, put this on. And then I slipped it on my head. I went, oh no, Ewan, watch this. Hey, Zen. And she goes, you need to buy that hat. And I go, yeah, I know, I need to buy that hat. And I said, honestly, I understand why they do it. I was like, I can't believe I didn't do it for the previous 6 years of living in Arizona, because as soon as you put it on, the temperature drops about 20 degrees.
There's a reason guys wear hats.
I get it now. It's not just because they look cool.
They kind of are.
But it's kind of become my thing now. So whenever I do a right this minute, that Englishman in Texas video, you know, I'll wear the hat. So, and then what I've recently been doing as well is using it because I can do accents. And so I can do the Texas accent. And it's
and there are quite a few Texas accents.
That's right. Well, that's the
There's
one thing
East Texas.
I found. Well, the thing is, this is the thing, Anne, right? People tell me this. Because I know, because in my wife's family, there's one brother whose lips don't even move.
No, that's pretty much Central Texas.
And
to me, you don't.
She's got another brother that's all twang and is up and down, and then my wife is a very sort of straight up normal accent. So I mean, there's 4 accents in their family alone.
Right,
so as much as people say, I think it's because Texans move around. Because I'm there, like you said, I'm out in State Classy or I'm out of town and I'm meeting people and they're all from Waco. No one's accent is the same. I think it's literally just who your mother was, who you grew up with, or the shows you watched when you were growing up or listened to. And so, yeah, it's not like in the UK where every single town, village almost, has its own accent. And certain big cities, depending on how big they are, they have their own accents as well. So, you know, a South London accent, a North London accent, but you've got like Birmingham's got the Brummie accent, and Liverpool and Newcastle. Right. Well, yeah, Liverpool. And
Liverpool, yeah.
And it's wild. So you always know where someone's from in the UK. Whereas, here, I haven't figured that out yet. I haven't quite figured that out, but I'll get there.
Well, you're having a lot of fun with it, but just tell them some of the numbers. I mean, it's incredible. You'll put up a video and just immediately have thousands.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did a video. I mean, I did a video about Texas's biggest secret. It's the one they don't want to share with anybody else, and it's one of the favorite things of everybody. But it was about HEB. And I did an HEB video, and that went over 1 million views. And just then once,
and so I think we were talking about HEB knows about
that's the thing.
That,
yeah. So
yeah.
I you know,
I would think they would want to know about that.
My numbers grew pretty quickly. Like I think I'm up to about 40,000 on TikTok in just a couple of months, and once I got to a point that I was able to then unlock monetization, there was this email waiting for me from HEB going, "We really like your video. Can we sponsor you?" I was like, yeah, sure.
Sure, yeah.
So it's been great. I had my HEB socks on yesterday, actually, because they sent me a gift basket, and then
there's some great HEB swag, yeah.
And then but also just Texans as well, just going, "Oh yeah, no, we love HEB." But also at the same time, as I like to do research and get maybe a little bit deeper into a story sometimes, and I like telling Texans something that they actually didn't realize. Because a lot of people, you'd be surprised how many people didn't realize that HEB doesn't go outside Texas. But then there are many people who think it's only in Texas, which isn't true. There's something like 200 locations in Mexico.
Really, yeah. In Mexico, and just recently they were in Dallas. I mean, they were not as far north as Dallas.
I remember when
that was a big deal.
Was about as the north as it
exactly.
went. I mean, that's the thing. So
yeah, but in Mexico, yeah.
So, but again, a lot of people didn't know that. I did a video about the official state motto of Texas, which kind of blew up on Facebook. I think it's about 100,000 there, but it was one of those things that people didn't actually know what it was. Neither did I. That's why I Googled it. And I was looking at it because a lot of people think it's like, come and take it, like the Alamo.
No. That was a flag.
Texas,
that was a flag for revolution.
And but you'd be surprised what even like Texas thought. And so when I sort of got it down to, well, it's actually friendship.
Yeah, we're the friendly state.
Right, but the origins of that goes all the way back to the Caddo Nation, the native people who, that was their word, was like, their word for friendship. Then the Tejanos came in and they sort of, the Mexicans or the Tejanos, and they pronounced it a different way. And then when the settlers came in, it became Texas. So the way that it goes all the way back to is actually from the native word for friendship, which is why Texas is friendship. But that's exactly why I started doing the videos, actually, because Texas ends up in the news a lot, invariably for the wrong reasons. Well, even if it's like a true story, the things that get attention are always kind of the negative ones.
That's sort of the nature of news, though, I have to say. It is indeed.
And so, people would joke about Texas. I'm living here, and I'm going, no, man, people have got Texas wrong. It's I've been all over the world. I take this as someone that's been to like 50 countries and lived in 4 or 5, is that it's just about the friendliest place that I've ever been. It's a very welcoming place. It's a very kind place. And also when people just see something that needs to be done or see someone in need, they just go over and help.
Yeah, they do.
And so I felt like a little bit of a responsibility of, no, I'm going to tell the true story of Texas. And like the whole point of that Englishman is to bring people together. Because like you were just saying there with like news, is that everything in news and everything in media right now, I feel has been finding a way to pull people apart.
Yeah, divisive, yeah.
Put people in team A or team B, team red, team blue, or anything else there. And I was like, you know what? That's why the Englishman is deliberately apolitical. It's about everything that we do agree on, about the beers and the hot dogs and the Friday night lights and the rodeos and the fun, the outdoors and the kolaches and, where the best burger is and the friendship and companionship. So that's why, I wanted to go out and try to do something good. And I think that's been connecting with people. And
it's a big state with a big heart. And I get to do twice a month a little feature for KXXV, Traveling Texas with Ann Harder. And I've gone to a lot of places, things that were on my bucket list and so forth. So I've got a whole list of things to send your way, fun places to go and check out.
911, what's your emergency?
Do you hear that? It's coming from the house.
It's coming from inside the house? Do you mean? Could it be?
The Poltergeist. New from Rogue Media. 2 haunted hotties talking about haunted places. Every episode we dive deep into the darkest places and give you a bit of history.
We're getting spooky in all the right places.
You've gobbled your last ghoul.
Follow along for the craziest and spookiest stories with Debbie's Dark Tourism. The Stanley Hotel,
Winchester House,
the Alamo,
Hotel Monte Vista,
and more spooky places. Find us at _Poltergals. POLTERGALS.
Look over your shoulder. It's us, the Poltergals.
Wherever you consume the podcast, you can find us there.
Hi, this is Sarah,
And I'm Carter.
and this is Some of Our Thoughts.
We're two Southern sommeliers, and we want to share everything we love and know about wine. We started hanging out during quarantine and cooking and drinking and listening to music, and we just thought this would be a great way to bring everything we know to you guys.
We will make wine knowledge and food pairings easy and approachable. So put on your favorite vinyl, grab your favorite glass of wine, tune into our show, and let's have some fun.
Wine and
vinyl.
So check us out on roguemedianetwork.com or wherever you get your favorite podcast. We'll be talking about a lot.
Pros and heroes. Gonna tell you about pros and heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Hey, I'm Zach,
And I'm Mike.
and we have a fantastic new podcast to tell you about. Bros, Foes, and Heroes. It's the two of us looking into the world of comics, breaking down some characters that you may have never heard of, and some that are just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so Zach comes up with a character each time, and I go into it just completely blind. I don't know who this person is or what their abilities are or anything, and basically I guess we kind of go over their origin story and just some of the ridiculous stuff that maybe, especially Golden Age stuff.
Oh, Golden Age stuff is always the best, and we will make sure to highlight all of the shenanigans and just absolute weirdness of everything.
Yeah, that's right. So subscribe today and follow us on Instagram at Bros, Foes, Heroes.
And if you don't, I know where you live. Not really, but please subscribe.
Pros and heroes. Gonna tell you about pros and heroes. Gonna tell you about.
I really want to, honestly do want to make this the thing that I'm doing for my job. Because like you said, it is a huge place. There is a lot to do. Mm-hmm. There's lots of stories to tell. I really do want to get out and explore the state and get out to I was down, I always feed it out into the comments, let me know somewhere to go. Let me know, a place that would be fun to visit. And one of the ones that came out was during the ice storm. They were all trapped at home. So I did a live video on Facebook and I said, look, just for fun, I know you guys like doing this kind of thing. Send me the names of Texas towns and I'll try and pronounce them because there's some really weird ones here.
Yes, there are.
And one of the ones that got sent was Andice, right? It's a teeny tiny town of about 25 people. It's about 60 miles from here.
Yes.
And but as soon as someone put that comment, there were 3 comments that came up back to back to back saying, oh, best burger in Texas, best burger in Texas. They got this tiny little place. It's literally the only store, the general store, in the middle of town. So it was like last week I said to my missus, it was a Wednesday and it was noon. I said, honey, should we just road trip down to Andice and try their burger? And that's, I made a video out of it. And it's, of course, when you say, well, is this the best burger in Texas? You get 700 comments going, actually, this is the best burger in Texas.
No. Yeah.
You got to come visit this place. But that's exactly what I'm looking for because it's very much crowdsourced because my experience of Texas is, I've been lucky enough. I've been a little bit to Dallas. I've done a fair few visits to Austin. I love San Antonio. The Riverwalk is a place that's very close to my heart. I've done a couple of different trips down there. I barely know Houston at all. I mean, I went to the Texans Stadium once because one of my brothers-in-law was a coach for a team that went to state. So we're all at the game watching the state game, which is, quintessentially Texas experience. But I've never actually been into the city. I've just experienced the ring road, which is a nightmare.
Oh my goodness, yeah. that loop is...
It is a monster. It is terrifying.
Is something, yeah. Houston's It's got its own vibe. I mean, they're very different than Dallas, and of course Dallas very different than Fort Worth. I mean, it's interesting how the big cities. So, what kind of vibe would you say Waco has?
It's so different. I mean, the thing is, Anne, 17 years ago when I first came out, it was, Waco still had that reputation, had the story we'd all been watching when we'd been younger, and it had been on the news, and it's like it feels like it had been bleeding into the background, and it was like a place. I remember, I would go watch Baylor at the old stadium, back when Baylor just lost all the and it was just like,
lived through all those days.
Do you want to come watch Baylor lose? Yeah, okay, go watch Baylor lose,
of course.
Eat some popcorn. But like it was around the time I remember I was here for a while, and it was just during the resurgence of the Baylor team. I went down to watch the Alamo Bowl in San Antonio when RG3 was quarterback. I saw that game. I was screaming my lungs out watching them play. But then it was around that time, so money comes in because of that. You get the new stadium, and just the way that Waco has glowed up in the last 8 years is incredible.
It truly is.
Especially in the last 3 years, really. I mean, the pandemic certainly, put a dampener on things for a while. But I used to say call Waco to other people, and I go, it's the on the way to city. You were on the way to Dallas. You were on the way to San Antonio.
Exactly.
You were on the way to Austin. You drove through Waco. Whereas now Waco is a place where people are coming. People are choosing to move here. People are choosing to come here for events. You've got food truck festivals and Dia de los Muertos and movie festivals and all this other stuff that's going on, that Waco's now got its own sort of vibe. Depending on where you are. Downtown, you've got this sort of little mini Austin feel. You got that little vibe, but then you get down kind of by the river in Cameron Park. You've got that I'm still in the country. So it's like, the other cities feel like a city, whereas Waco still feels like the country, if you know what I mean. Like you can, I mean, I live technically in the country.
You are in the country in Lorena,
10 minutes, and I'm in Hewitt, which is basically now it's all grown. Waco's grown past. It's all one and the same thing.
Yeah, things have really grown.
But even Lorena, I mean, I remember a day, I'm back in the day when it was just all fields, and now there's all this development, these new
lots of
houses
projects
going up, and it's just growing, booming, and expanding. And I think Waco really, quite interestingly, has become that place to be. There's a lot going on. And I think if you have something you want to do, or you want to grow or open something, I think Waco's the place to do it right now.
And it's an easy place to live.
Very.
It really is.
Yeah, it is it's easy to get around. You don't have to deal with the traffic of Austin, the sheer scale of Dallas, Fort Worth, where it's just like, where are we going? It's going to take an hour wherever we're going.
Yeah, no matter what.
Yeah, whereas here, it's like you got the
10, 15 minutes. You always budget maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'll be there, and you don't have to really worry. I mean, I remember during Christmas, my father-in-law was like, wow, traffic downtown was just so bad. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, it took 2 goes to get through a red light. And I go, that's most cities in the world.
I was going to say.
But in Waco,
we feel put upon. A little put upon if you have to wait through twice.
I'm at Lake Air trying to turn left, and it's taking forever.
Exactly. Well, I knew we were going to have a lot of fun, and we've gone longer than I normally do, and I know you've got other things. You had some big fish to fry this afternoon. You just have jumped in with both feet here.
Oh, I'd stick around for 3 hours.
You got it. Well,
I would stories to tell.
I know there's so much more, and we'll just have to do this again. I mean, that's the only. But I do like to end these with a little questionnaire that the late great James Lipton would do on Inside the Actors Studio.
Oh,
it's
cool.
sort of his take on this is what I have. What is your favorite word?
Oh, I usually talk about that. Oh no, I love words that just sound good onomatopoetically as well. But
that's a good word right there.
Yeah, I mean, onomatopoetic is a very fun word to say. Translucent, that's a good word to say as well. Let's go with onomatopoetically. I like throwing that one out. That as opposed to anti-disestablishmentarianism, which is just very long.
Is that your least favorite then? What is your least favorite word?
Spell.
Yeah, don't ask me.
The least favorite word as a younger person was yacht, because I couldn't spell it. The Y-A, I have to say yacht.
Yeah.
It's like I lived in Ahwatukee in Phoenix, but I'd have to say Ahwatukee, so I knew how to actually spell it.
How to spell it. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
It's I was just talking about this yesterday with people. Is honestly, as much as I do my own thing, it's collaboration. I'm very collaboratively creative. That's what I'm doing right now, is trying to find sort of the That Englishman team, some people that I can work with, because some of the best ideas come by bouncing an idea off somebody else. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine used to say it, the guy that actually taught me TV when he first hired me, but You know, he's like, I stare at a blank piece of paper and I'll stare at it forever. But if you draw a line on it, I'll finish the picture. And that's kind of like, you know, one thing that I do is I'm quite reactionarily funny. You know, that's why I write this minute work. I'm quite quick on my feet. I've got quite a quick wit. But if no one's really saying anything, you know, you've got to fill just the dead air. But if other people are saying stuff, I'll finish their sentences for them. It'll remind me of an interesting fact. And then suddenly you're jamming and you're off on some other random tangent, but that's where the entertainment comes in. Yeah. So it's collaboration is what really gets me going.
Well, then what turns you off creatively or spiritually?
Honestly, it's pretty hard. It's only when I'm just like completely, because my brain is sometimes just constantly going and there's almost
I can tell.
too many ideas. And honestly, some friends of mine, like Adrian, Dave's wife, she's been the one that's really been helping me sort of focus my ideas and, you know, realize them visually on a board.
She's great at that.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
She really is.
She has a bit of a ninja. She's like, you know, my unofficial.
That's a good description.
My unofficial consultant. She's
really
been
on
helping.
this show too.
But that's what really gets me is that when it's just, you know, I'm too overwhelmed with the ideas and I need to marshal them and sort of put them out. But nothing really turns me off of the creative thing. I love to do things like this. I love to do radio. I was just on NPR this morning helping them with their drive, and I love to create something that people find entertaining. I love to entertain. You know, when people come up and just go, "Oh, I really like your content," or "I really love your show," I'm like, "Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting it."
Exactly.
I just want people to have a good time.
Right. What sound do you love the most?
I'll tell you actually, recently, because I've been spending a lot of time outside. You know, when you got some land finally, and when we lived in Phoenix, it was, you know, concrete jungle, building right next to us, tiny little yard, you know, asphalt outside. It always felt really hot. Is just sitting outside, and I've got the trees in the wind. It's just so relaxing. I've got these beautiful wind chimes as well. Oh. So I sit out on the day. But honestly, if you're ever watching any of that Englishman videos that I'm recording at home, you'll always hear them in the background. Ding, 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 ding. But that is the one that I realized I missed, because when I was in Phoenix, my buddy Nick from the show, we'd often go camping together because Arizona has some great camping, but you have to drive a couple of hours to be able to see the stars and sit among the sort of the nature. Whereas I'm like, now I just go outside my door and sit outside, and I was sitting
maybe
next to
hear
my
a cow
pit.
mooing.
And then you get all the coyotes yipping and howling.
Oh, yeah.
And then my dogs are like, wait, do we howl? I feel like I should howl right now. Let's howl. Okay, let's howl. Okay. So yeah, that's what I found is like I've been trying to find my peace again, because you know, I was really right this minute was great, but I only had 10 days off a year for the first 5 years.
You were blowing and going, man.
And so I genuinely, I mean, during COVID, realized I was burnt out. I was burning out. I hadn't had enough time. I wasn't looking after myself. I wasn't just, it was all work. And so something I've been recently trying to do is just bring more peace to my life and just spend a moment and read a book, you know, and just sit outside. And fortunately, Texas is a beautiful place to sit outside.
That's a great way to recharge. What sound do you hate?
What sound do I hate? You know, I mean, part of me would say the sound of a city, but sometimes that is also that white noise is actually, you know, because I came from Hong Kong, a place where there was always sound.
Probably a constant rumble.
I tell you that one sound I did hate is my wife and I went, we stayed in Hong Kong. We were on a sort of 3-month modeling assignment. We got put in a tiny little modeling apartment, and Hong Kong is very close together. Okay, it's like the New York of Asia. And the day we got there, they started demolishing the building attached to us.
Oh my gosh!
So I had a bottle of water. I remember
that's
the first
exciting.
morning, and it goes ding, 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 and falls off the table.
Oh gosh!
But you'd be surprised that like within 4 days you didn't hear it. You just tuned it out. And you're watching television. I remember this. I was watching TV, and my wife comes in, and suddenly the drilling stops, and we realize that the television is on 99.
Really loud.
And I'm like, whoa, what am I doing? Good Lord.
quick.
So at the moment, I think it's just a bit of chaotic noise, but or just my children being upset. Don't like that noise.
Yeah, I've heard that from other people. My kids are fighting.
Oh no, my children actually, they're angels.
I know. Yeah,
sure. I know, for real. Like during COVID, with that, not one slam door, not one screaming match, no ground. They understood the assignment, and they understood we were on spaceship Pettigrew, and we're going to get through this. And they were an absolute treasure. My children are a blessing in so many ways. I was never that well behaved as a child. They do not get it from me. That's all I know.
What other profession would you like to try? or have tried?
I was, until that gap year, where I accidentally got into modeling, accidentally got into a movie and decided, oh, this is fun. I had been actively meeting with the RAF liaison officer. I wanted to be a fast jet pilot for the RAF. I've been an aviation enthusiast since I was a child. One thing my wife kind of likes, she, it's a little bit nerdy for her, but she likes it. But, whenever I'll see an aircraft, I usually know what it is.
Sure.
So I know, okay, I can see off in the distance. And I go, oh, that's an AH-64D longbow. That's the Apache with the radar thing on top. And so my neighbor James, he's a huge nerd when it comes to planes. In fact, he's in the commemorative Air Force. So he looks after a B-25. So he took me up to Wings Over Dallas. Unfortunately, I was making a video. It's one of my favorite videos, actually, because it's a very real one. But we were there for that the mid-air disaster that happened. It was really, I have waited my entire life. So the B-17 and the Spitfire are my two favorite planes of all time. I can tell the sound of a Spitfire with my eyes closed. But I'd never been able to see a B-17 fly. And I was like a 10-year-old. I was so excited. I was on the edge of tears and I had goosebumps. And then for that tragedy to happen at the same time was really hit me right in the gut, actually. And I was making a video about it, and I decided that I was going to tell the true story. So I edited the video exactly as the experience was. So it's a really, really happy video up until the moment. And because everybody else is doing the story about the crash. So I figured, well, I'm going to do the story about what it was like to be there.
To be there, to experience.
It was really tough. That was.
What job do you know you would not ever want to do?
I could never do what my wife does. She's recently, numbers and databases terrify me. Give me a microphone, put me on stage in front of 15,000 people with no script and go, Ollie, you need to fill time for 20 minutes. I'd much rather do that, right? That's something that basically is a nightmare for everybody else on the planet. Is
that's public speaking, yeah.
So my wife, she's now sort of gone out on her own, like she started her own bookkeeping company. Actually, if anybody's looking for bookkeeping services, Oleander Bookkeeping right there. But because I told her, I said, Zen, you don't realize how much numbers like this give people anxiety.
Yeah.
It gives people, and she takes joy from it. She sees it as a puzzle that needs to be solved. There is nothing more satisfying for her than to press the button and it reconciles to 0.00, and she'll just come in and she's doing a dance.
I did it.
Yeah, that for me is, if you wanted to sort of torture me and find out where the rebel base was, if this was Star Wars, it'd be like, do some bookkeeping. I go, they're on Yavin 4, just go get them.
Reconcile this account now.
That's not for me. So yeah,
all right.
But that's why I think we work so well as a couple, is that we're very, very similar, but we're also complete opposites at the same time.
Yeah, you complement one another beautifully.
But she's my teammate in everything.
Mm-hmm. Finally, what do you want to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Not you. Or he goes, hey, you know what? You made some pretty funny stuff. I mean, honestly, I try to live as a good person.
Yeah.
I do. I try to bring joy into people's lives. I try to be positive. I try to find the positive in everything. So, yeah. And maybe it's just welcome in. That would be quite nice.
Well, you are a joy. Ollie, it's been so much fun. I knew that we'd just hit it off because you are such a genuine talent and just hitting all the right buttons right now.
I appreciate you saying so, and it was a really pleasure to come in. Seriously, I'm saying anytime you want, I'd love to come in if you have other.
Well, we've got
guests.
So much more we could talk about.
Oh, 100%. Like I said, we barely even scratched the surface.
Oh, Oli Pettigrew, that Englishman.
Yep, that Englishman
in Texas.
Yeah,
look for the black hat, and they can find you. I mean, that's your handle.
TikTok, Instagram, and then if you look up that Englishman in Texas or Oli Pettigrew, you'll find my Facebook page as well. I put the videos out there, and I'm about to also start putting out some longer form videos on YouTube and things like that.
Very good. All the best to you, Ollie.
Thank you
so much, and thank you for being with us. Join us again. Bye-bye.
Central Texas Life with Ann Harder is part of the Rogue Media family. Be sure to check out our other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate this show 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.